Hi, it's John Halliday here, otherwise known as Flash Jazz Cat. Welcome to the APT tutorial video in which we're going to be looking at the use of FDISK to partition compact flash media hard disks which adhere to the APT standard. For the purposes of the demonstration, we're going to be using the Altera emulator, which is emulating the Ultimate 1 megabyte and Side 2 equipment. If we hop into the Ultimate 1 megabyte menu here, we can see that we've got Sparta-DOS-X enabled, which isn't essential, but it's the DOS I prefer to use. And we've got side hardware on with button, which gives us which turns the Side 2 cartridge into a proper PBI hard disk device. And we've got the side PBI ID set to 1, which is the default. We're just going to leave it at that, and the only time you would really need to change that is if you have a conflict with another PBI device. And that's relevant because this version of FDISK, version 4, allows you to individually partition compliant devices simultaneously attached to the computer. So that's fine. So we're going to save it, quit, and reboot. And what we'll do is assume we've got a compact flash card attached in the virtual side cartridge, which is 512 megabytes. So that's the one we're going to partition. So the first thing we'll do is load up the Partition Editor. This is, as I said, a brand new version of the Partition Editor. It's been in development for about 3 years, been completely or largely rewritten twice because of the changing requirements of the job it had to do, really. So it's menu driven anyway. Press escape. If you just want to have a look at the media, if we just select properties, there's the generic device, so named because that's the name of the media in Altera. So we'll select that, and we can see that this particular card has already been prepared with an APT, which is the container for the Atari partitions. More commonly you'll see this with a master boot record, which is a protective device to prevent the PC from destroying the Atari partitions. But in this case, earlier on when I was debugging and testing, I prepared this card with an APT, so there's no master boot record on this card. So anyway, it tells you what the device, the name of the device, the name of the media, size, and what it found on the card fundamentally. So we'll just press enter. So what we're going to do is we're going to initialize this card from scratch. If you bought a card from a shop, more than likely it's just going to be formatted with a FAT3032 with no master boot record on it, which is fine. You can use it that way with the XEX loader, Candles loader. No need to have a master boot record on there. But if you want to use the card both with Atari partitions of the kind that you might use with Sparta-DOS-X, and maybe have a FAT32 on the card as well as Atari partitions, you need to put a master boot record on it, and this software allows you to do that. So we'll select Initialize. Once again, it's enumerating devices, so we'll choose generic. Warning that the APT will be overwritten in this case because that's what it found on the card, so yes, we're okay with that. Right, what we're going to do is you can see that you just tab through this dialog. It's pretty much what you would expect, what you use every day on the computer. Go backwards with Shift Tab. Now if you turn off Master Boot Record, which is selected by default, then you can't have a fat partition. Because the primary purpose of this editor is APT. If you just want to prepare a card with fat partitions or just format the card fat, well, you can do that on the computer, you can do that with Windows. We want to have an MBR. When I deselected MBR, it turns off fat sensibly, so I think we'll have a fat 32. We'll split the card in half. So in this case we want to use half of the card for Candle's XAX loader and half of it for APT partitions. And I noticed this is actually a 1 GB card, not a 512 MB card, as I think I said earlier. So what we'll have is we'll have half of the space for the FAT, for half of the space for the APT. Now, as I said, because the primary purpose of this FDISK is to prepare the APT, you've got to define one at this point. If I don't, that's what I get. Similarly, if I define the APT, but I've told it that I want a FAT32, and if I forget to put the size of the FAT in, it tells you. So these are just basic safeguards. So we're happy with that. Write the disk structure, yes. So here's the APT editor, which then appears. If we go into disk properties, we'll verify that the size of the APT is 512 megabytes, which is half of the size of the card. The editor, certainly over the past couple of versions, has changed beyond recognition. I think it's a lot simpler now, so really all you need to do to start adding partitions is just press enter, type the size in. Most commonly is 65,535 sectors. Press enter again. There's the partition, the start sector, the size defaults to 512 bytes per sector because that's what SpartaDOS X supports. That's what I use. It's the optimal size. If you want to change anything, just cursor back up there. We can give the thing a drive number and change the density. I should use the menus here to show you what's going on. There we go. If you want to have a double density partition, maybe if you're using SpartaDOS or MyDOS, that's how you do it. Everything's really accessible via the menus or via shortcut keys. Obviously once you learn the shortcut keys, it's generally faster to use them. We'll go ahead and add some more partitions. You can't cursor right down the table until you add partitions. It's pretty flexible, however. Have another partition there. I'll add another one. We'll change the density of that one back to 512. Go down and add some more drive numbers. We'll call that one drive 4. We'll just hit V. Call that one drive 5. You need to remember that if you if you made 15 partitions and gave them all drive numbers, which would have to be unique, because as you add drive numbers to partitions, they disappear from the selection that's available. When you next boot the computer to make the partition table active, any serial drives that you have would be blocked out, so it's worth remembering. Now, if you want to make one of the drives bootable, you just go and select partition, bootable, and there we go. It's to put the boot flag on the drive. If you were to remove that drive number subsequently by cursoring back up here, it takes the boot flag off. So you can just continue to fill the partition table up with sectors like that, with partitions. If you find that a bit tedious and you want to create a great many partitions at once, there's another way to do it. If you go to the partition menu and go to fill divide, this allows you to very quickly prepare the partition table. Most commonly you want partitions, a lot of partitions all of the same size. Now you can define the number of partitions you want, you can define the size of partitions without defining the number, and it'll just fill the partition table with as many partitions of whatever size as will fit. So if we, for example, we type 64 partitions, it warns us it's going to clear what we already did. That's fine. Now we've got 64 partitions. It decided on the size for us, the optimum size to fill up the table. Let's go back into this. The maximum number of partitions supported in this program is 128, so let's fill it right up with 128 partitions. Okay. Once again, give them drive numbers, etc. Or if you just wanted to use a particular size, the typical size that we use there, that gave us 15 partitions. Now you notice that you might think it's odd that it didn't make 16 partitions, because there are 6,535 free sectors on the disk. But there's an overhead for not only for the partition table chain itself, which hasn't been incurred here because we've only got 15 partitions. Each partition by default also has an extra sector just ahead of it, which stores metadata, including the name of the partition, which you can set by pressing N. We'll call that one boot, and we'll call that one storage. So these names are stored in that extra sector, so there really wasn't room for a 16th partition here, because that would contain one sector more than you specified. In this version it's also possible to, if you don't like sector numbers, and perhaps this will become more relevant as we were able to support larger partitions on the Atari, you can view the sizes in megabytes. So there we go, slightly awkward size, just one sector short of 32 megabytes. So you can toggle that with the M key anytime you like. And obviously when you edit a partition size, the number you type in it depends on the view you've got active at the moment. So when we specify the size of a partition in this view, we use megabytes. And then if we go back to sector view, we can see that that one was exactly 65,536 sectors long. So there we go, we can set the drive numbers, change the density, set the boot flag. You can also lock a partition with the L key. That just means that it's it's read only. The active flag, again we can get at these with the menus either way. The active flag just means that the partition's active. If you turn the active flag off, it's still there on the disk occupying space, but it simply won't be automatically mounted when you next turn on the computer. So we'll change that one back. Other things we've got here, yeah, if you want to delete an entry, just go on partition, delete entry. Are you sure? Yes. And there it's gone. Similarly, if you want to insert a partition higher up the table, just go into partition, insert entry, and that opens up a gap for you where you can type the size. If you change your mind, just press escape and it closes the gap again. So you can also get it that with the I key. So we'll just add another partition the same size, press enter, and there it is. So you can insert and delete partitions anywhere in the table. What we'll do is we'll give a couple of these partitions drive numbers and set the boot flag on drive 3. So that leaves us with drive numbers 1 and 2 for maybe for SIO devices or an SIO to PC connection. That's what I tend to do, is just leave, rather like floppy A and B on the PC, just leave those two free, so you're ensured that you haven't blocked out the serial drives. You notice we've got a lot of partitions here that don't have drive numbers. They're not going to be accessible until they're mounted. You can do that dynamically using various tools. The reason that APT supports so many partitions was because of the limitations, or the current limitations on partition size. It was envisaged that it would be useful to have a great many partitions on the disk. How many people use that facility? It's yet to be seen, and it's probable that the limitations on partition sizes will be lifted as far as Partitions is concerned in the near future, hopefully. So if we're happy with what we've got there, we'll go into disk, write table, write to disk, are you sure? And that's written the partition table out. To prove it, we will close the disk, open again, and there's the partition table we just created. So that's ready for use. What we'll do is we'll exit the program, and we'll do a reboot. This refreshes the partition table. You can do the same thing with shift and reset. If you hold the shift key down, press reset, that'll reread the partition table from the disk. So there's a couple of ways you can do it. The reason for the shift key is because we have with the Ultimate 1 megabyte inside hardware, we have facilities for dynamically mounting disk images, and if the partition table was reread from disk every time reset was pressed without any kind of modifier key, that would wipe those disk images out. It would unmount them. So what we do now is format the C drive, unit 3, volume, boot, we'll call it boot, and build directory, because you don't physically format these hard disk partitions. Are you sure? Yes. Come out of that, and then we'll do the dir, and there's our 32 megabyte Sparta.x partition. So that's pretty much how you go about setting up partitions for use with DOS. Now what I'll show you in the next tutorial is how to use fat partitions for use with the XEX loader and with the Sparta.x FAT16 driver. That becomes quite interesting, because you can directly read the FAT from Sparta.dos and correspondingly you can copy files to it using a card reader on the PC, and that's pretty handy. So that's what we'll cover in the next tutorial. I hope this has been useful, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and until next time, goodbye.